My name is Denise Bruinhof. I am a pelvic floor physiotherapist in Rijswijk. It's near Delft and The Hague in the Netherlands. And I've been working here for 4 years now. And ever since I've been working with Maple as well. And then Onno asked me to, he asked a lot of my colleagues as well. So we are doing some webinars for you. So today, overactive bladder. Now we're going to show. And I changed the title of the webinar a bit, which is now idiopathic detrusor overactivity and neurogenic detrusor overactivity and Maple. And that was because, well, in terms of terms, I discovered there are some changes in words between Dutch and English, so I figured I will just do it this way. So, well, let's start. Conflict of interest, there's none. This is my lunch, yeah, so I'm just fully free of any interest in Maple. I don't get paid for anything. Before we start, if you have questions, you can push the hand button, just raise the hand digitally, and you can ask your question. Anna will break in if necessary. And from there, yeah, I wish you a lot of fun today. Also, in the end, there will be some time to ask questions, and we can just go back in time a bit. So today I'm going to talk about what is the pelvic floor and what does the pelvic floor do. What's the difference between idiopathic detrusor overactivity and neurogenic detrusor overactivity? How to treat idiopathic detrusor overactivity? How to use Maple in patients with those conditions? Yeah, and I hope you will enjoy it. So, since not everyone is medically underlaid, I wanted to start with some explanation about the pelvic floor. On the drawings, you can see the female pelvic floor. Men have pelvic floors as well. I get that question asked a lot, but men do have a pelvic floor. It looks quite similar to the female pelvic floor. They will just miss the gap for the vagina. So from here, the pelvic floor is a striated muscle, just like your arm muscles, your leg muscles. And striated muscles are muscles that make us move. This muscle is a muscle that contracts, that can be too tense, that can be not strong enough, and that will cause several problems. The pelvic floor is hanging in the pelvic floor hangs between the bones of the pelvis like a hammock. And when you have a hammock, you really want it to have the right tension to be able to chill in it properly. And the pelvic floor has to have the right tension to function properly. It has quite some functions, not just chilling in it. It has the function of chilling for the organs, so the bladder, the uterus, the bowel, and of course, in men, the prostate. But as well, it has a very important function for keeping poo and pee off the floor and letting it go whenever you're on the toilet. Also, it has a great influence in sex. It contracts while you're having an orgasm. It will make sure there can be an erection, whether there's enough lubrication in women. And on top of that, it also has a role in stability of the pelvis and the lower back. And thus, there's a lot of relation between the pelvic floor and other parts of the body, either the organs and the muscles as well, because to those bones, the glute muscles attach, the inner thigh muscles attach, the belly muscles attach, and so they will influence each other. And we will always take the whole, as a pelvic floor physiotherapist, we will always take those in concern as well. So that's for the pelvic floor itself. What's the difference between idiopathic detrusor overactivity and neurogenic detrusor overactivity? You could call it overactive bladder as well. It's just more English than Latin. But I chose to make this this difference to just hold myself to ICS terms. Idiopathic detrusor overactivity is, as you can see, a urodynamic observation characterized by involuntary detrusor contractions during the filling phase, which can be spontaneous or provoked. So the bladder will contract, and due to that, there will be an urge, and sometimes even loss of urine. This, as a pelvic floor physiotherapist, I see a lot when there's urgency symptoms, and in referral from the doctor to the signals in urodynamic examination, so like the uroflow or the systometric examinations. Uroflow will be done to a lot of patients, but the metrics will not be done as frequent, and so it's not a proper diagnosis at that point. But that's something I reckon a lot. Maybe it might be different in different countries or different hospitals. Then from there, the neurogenic detrusor overactivity, which is urgency with or without urgency urinary incontinence, usually with increased daytime frequency and nocturia in the setting of a clinically relevant neurologic disorder, with at least partially preserved sensation. And so you will see this in multiple sclerosis patients, Parkinson's patients, spinal cord injuries. Yeah, and there will always be an underlying factor for the urgency, which is not the case in idiopathic detrusor overactivity. I'm gonna do the therapeutic part for the idiopathic overactivity as if it's kind of just urgency, because when the detrusor overactivity is idiopathic, you will see a lot that, and it's real detrusor overactivity, you will see a lot that in the end there happens to be some other neurogenic disorder, as even though they didn't know that in the first place. So for the treatment of idiopathic detrusor overactivity, you can see the doctor. They will give you medication, for example, anticholinergics, parasympatholytics. They could also use Botox or neurostimulation. They don't do this a lot, neurostimulation with InterStim, like it's the the nearest stimulation, which is inserted in one's body. So it's a permanent thing. They do this a lot more in the, for example, Parkinson's patients. And then, of course, there's the pelvic floor physiotherapy. The we will do pelvic floor training, pelvic floor relaxation, which to me is a necessary part to training as well. And we can do anogenital electrical stimulation with, for example, maple. Before we start the treatment, we will also always do examination and anamnesis. So we will start talking, we observe our patients, we run some clinical tests, and we will do a vaginal or anal manual examination. Talking and observing is very, very important to me as a pelvic floor physiotherapist. While we are not talking to to a bladder, we are talking to a person who has a bladder, and in that person, a lot of things happen. So we cannot just say, "Oh, we will fix that bladder," because stress is a huge thing in our community, and stress does have very much to do with pelvic floors and bladders and urination. So we cannot exclude that. So we start talking, we observe how is someone's breath, how is someone's movement, how does someone walk. And if we know everything about one person, we will start running some tests, like we will do a bladder diary. We will do some queries, and in the end, we will start doing the physical examination, in which we don't just do the internal examination, but as well we will run some muscle tests for hip muscles, for belly muscles. Yeah. And a very important thing to start with is toileting behavior. We want to know how much does someone take in, so how much do they drink on a daily basis. Is this just 1.5 to 2 liters? It will just be fine, but as long as it's more or less. Some people drink 3 liters of water, and on top of that, you will see, with 2 cups of coffee, some sodas, some fruit juices. That is one thing that doesn't really make me concerned about their bladder or pelvic floor. It makes me concerned about maybe they should drink a bit less, and all their problems might be solved already. Then we see through a bladder diary how often they go to the toilet. Really, is it really too much, or are they just thinking it's too much? I once had a patient who was, for example, coming to me because he went to the toilet 6 to 8 times a day, and I was like, "Oh, but that's great. But why do you think you pee a lot?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, I went to the bar with my friends, and they never went to the toilet during the 4 hours we were there." And I was like, "Well, maybe your friends should come and see me, because you're doing great. But if he only pees 2 times a day, he might be getting some problems in the future." Um, and posture, because practically everyone I see sits on the toilet wrong. Okay. So you sit up straight, your feet are flat on the floor, knees are out. Um, your trousers, whenever you're wearing them, should be on your ankles, not on your knees. Um, and from there, you can start peeing. You sit at the very back of the toilet seat, to make sure the urethra is straight onto gravity. From there, when you think you're finished, you can wiggle a bit. You make a hollow back, you make a round back, you shift to the left, shift to the right, and then you tilt forward and you try to pee again. While peeing, it's important that the belly is always soft, very soft. And from there, you should be empty. If not, wiggle again. And whenever there's no pee coming anymore, you can just wipe and leave. So that's something that's really important to me to spread the word about, because yeah, it's so simple to be sitting on a toilet just right instead of wrong. Then we get to the pelvic floor muscle training. Pelvic floor muscle training will consist awareness. So where is my pelvic floor? Can I feel the pelvic floor? What does it do when I breathe in? What does it do when I lift a foot? What does it do? Yeah, during the day. And from there, we might as well work to relaxation of the pelvic floor, because a lot of pelvic floors tend to be stressed. There will be too much tension in the pelvic floor, and that will lead to just no functional contraction. From there, also coordination exercises are very important. We can do that with, like, I make a graph in my head or on a paper, and I tell them, okay, you make like a coxcomb, like you contract a tiny bit, a bit more, maximal, and then you take the same steps back. This will be the iceberg. Or you contract a bit, then you let go. You contract a bit more, you let go. Then you contract fully and you let go. And a bit less, let go. Well, and that way you make the coxcomb. From there, when coordination is right and relaxation is fully, we can start strength training, or as I will call it to my patients, we'll get to the bodybuilding schedule. And that will be just 3 sets of 10 to 15 maximal contractions and of the pelvic floor, and from there also holding the pelvic floor a bit more, a bit longer. And we will try to get them to a 30-second hold. So as you see, pelvic floor muscle training is not just about Kegels. Actually, it couldn't be less about Kegels. But in the end, you will need them. Now, how to use maple in patients with idiopathic detrusor overactivity? Well, I think you might have a clue when you see the nice graph here, because I could do the hammocks or the coxcomb or the iceberg. I can make them draw it themselves. But first, what is this maple device? You see the probe in the hand. It's practically as big as my finger, so it's not a very big thing to insert. It has 24 electrodes on it, and every electrode is represented in the grid. You can see the circle, and every point on the every part of the circle of the grid in the circle is connected to one of the dots. The probe is connected to the maple device, and the maple device has a Wi-Fi thing with the iPad. And I love iPads. Well, I love Apple, so as long as you like to work with those, you'll be fine. But what do we actually do with it? We can do EMG, so just measurements. So it's an accomplishment to the an extra to the examination. There's two different kinds of grids. You can take the comparison, the comparison grid. So it's the blue and red one. When there's when it's white, you're exactly on the same point as the control group. When it's blue, there's less muscle activity. When there's more activity, you'll get red, or the grid will get red. While in the black and white grid, you can see the darker the color, the more muscle activity there is. We can do maximal voluntary contractions, as you can see on the right with the black and white grid. You can see onset, offset, and it's a preset. You can just say, okay, you can tell the iPad, okay, I want to measure maximum voluntary contraction, and this is kind of what you get to see on the iPad. You can also say, okay, I want to see a longer contraction. That's also a preset, but you can adjust them just as you like. So EMG will do both the I lost my word. It will be for examination and for therapeutic reasons. You can use the maple. So then for therapeutic goals, there's also functional electrical stimulation. And here the grid is back as well. And we can, according to our findings in the EMG grid, we can say, okay, now I want to make less activity in some parts of the pelvic floor. In EMG, there's no power of a muscle, no muscle power measurement. It's a muscle activity measurement. It's the electrical sign that comes from a muscle that gets translated into the grid and the graph. And this is for every EMG measurement device, whatever. And here there's it's in Dutch, but there's a preset for overactivity in the pelvic floor. You just take that, and when you use it, it will release the action in the muscle, and we can just see, okay, so apparently in this person there was a lot of tension at the front and at the right of the pelvic floor, so we will send the signals to that specific part of the pelvic floor. When you have another probe which is bipolar, you can either send it, you can just send it left and right, and you'll do the whole pelvic floor at the same time. But sometimes you notice, okay, so here's too much tension, so you can do this. And then in another part of the pelvic floor, which is a bit weird for this example because it's the same activated electrodes, but you can just start activating these other parts of the pelvic floor. So to show you the difference between the first one and this one, so this is overactivity. It has a phase duration of 400 microseconds and a pulse frequency of 2 Hertz. And for underactivity, so to stimulate which is also a preset, will be a phase duration of 250 milliseconds and a pulse frequency of 50 hertz. So it's a different way of um, of um, signing the nerve, as you wish. And as I said, also with EMG, you can do some nice coordinative things because, well, you can really let people draw a coxcomb or a iceberg. So that's nice because it makes it very visual, and especially men are very into this. They like electronics apparently, and they like games maybe. So then we had to the neurogenic detrusor overactivity. In these patients, there's a lot going on. If we're talking about stress, they are stressed because they have a chronic illness. They will get specific medication from their doctors. They will maybe as well get bladder-specific medication, especially in Parkinson's patients. I know they use Interstim a lot. Yeah, which works pretty well. But also they get sent to the pelvic floor physiotherapist, where we will also do the pelvic floor training, relaxation, and biofeedback and electrical stimulation, which can again be through Maple or another device, but we're going to speak about Maple because this is the only device that can do this. Here you can see the different parts of the grid. So you can see where's the different muscles, where you can aim the probe. For treatment with EMG in neurogenic detrusor overactivity, we will use EMG because to inhibit the detrusor activity and to make the urge go away, you can use to start with, you can use the measurement of EMG to figure out what's the maximum voluntary contraction. You take half of that and you try to make the patient aim to half of the maximum voluntary contraction. So, for example, someone is able to squeeze and get around 15 to 20, let's say 20 microfolds. You will try to get them to up to 10 microfolds and hold it there for about 5 seconds. After those 5 seconds, the release, and you repeat this a few times, and they can see it in the graph. They can see what they are doing, whether there's the same tension left and right, because of the grid. The grid you can also turn. So as you can see at the left and right, in the middle of the black and white grid. Now left and right is for you to see, okay, this is left, this is right. But for the therapist who is on the opposite side of the patient, you can always also turn left and right around. So you can put it as like a mirror perspective, but you can also see it in real perspective, and it will just shift the sides then. EMG in neurogenic detrusor overactivity, and then there's also functional electrostimulation. We try in these patients to do quietly the same as the Interstim in a different way, so to really reduce bladder contractions. what you can do by 1,000 microseconds and 8 hertz for 20 minutes, just 6 weeks in a row. Also, this is a preset. It's called OAB, I guess. So that's just fine. It's easy to find. And you can, of course, combine this with the EMG treatment. Yeah, for me, that will be a thing because we have half an hour to treat people here. And then we have to clean the probe afterwards. So I always want to check in properly with my patients. So I will not do everything at the same time. It's just not manageable for me as a person. Yeah. So I guess this is it for me. This was some of my evidence, well, most of my evidence. Um, if you have any questions, especially for the people who are watching this at another time, not live, you can send them to me at denise@physiopelvis.nl or onno.klein@novakerk.com.